Welcome back to Neurodivergent Discipleship, How Faith Meets Every Kind of Mind, the show that's dedicated to helping churches, ministries, and faith communities create a more welcoming and accessible environment for everyone. I'm your host, Daniel Howell.
And I'm your host, Tia. So, Daniel, how's your week been so far?
It's been okay. It's been a little wild, little crazy. Had some fun things with having to preach with 2 minutes notice. That's always a fun thing, right?
Yes.
That 2 minutes notice. Oh, you're now preaching, but that was fun. So all kinds of fun things. We're here recording again, and I'm just enjoying the ride here.
Yeah, I'm
So
enjoying.
how's your week?
Well, I'm enjoying this beautiful fall weather myself. It was hot summer and these cooler temperatures. I'm loving it.
You were telling me about your husband's cooking stuff. What's he up to cooking again?
Yeah, like you saw earlier, my husband made a homemade apple pie from scratch, even the crust. And I tell you what, this is the second one he's made in 2 days because the first one did not last. And he just brought one in to show. And because we had extra apples, what better use extra apples than to make another apple pie? And it looks delicious. So I cannot wait to dive into that apple pie this evening. But speaking
Yeah.
of diving in our last episode, we gave you 5 quick wins for creating a more neuro-inclusive ministry with some deeper dives into sensory spaces and why fidgets work. And if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and check it out. There's a lot of great information to get you caught up. Today, though, we're tackling a topic that it can feel intimidating for ministry leaders, volunteers, even to parents. See them in the stores, even at my church. Those dreaded meltdowns. Meltdowns, whether it's a child who is inconsolable or a teen who becomes aggressive. And I know that can be a scary thing. It can feel chaotic and scary for the youth, the neurodivergent, and the person who's helping the neurodivergent. But as we've learned from research and other communities, a meltdown is a tantrum. It's a physiological response to being overwhelmed, almost like a cry for help.
Oh, exactly. It's a complete loss of control, right? So in this episode, we're going to explore and start with the 3-step framework for navigating a meltdown, right? We'll explore the theory and why behind these actions. And in the deeper dive, we'll get to more practical with specific strategies. And when we walk through those strategies that you can help even a neurotypical person regain control when they're on the verge of breakdown.
Sounds good. So grab your notebooks. Let's get into it. First thing we want to talk about today is the warning face, seeing those warning signs. Tell us more, Daniel.
The first step is to learn warning signs. Like a meltdown doesn't come out of nowhere. There's always a period of escalating stress and anxiety beforehand. It's kind of like when you can watch the loading screen on a toddler when they've got a tantrum coming. They're making that decision of, well, if I scream, maybe mommy and daddy will do this for me. But this is not so much the child making that choice. This is their body sending that signal. So you can tell a lot by body language. Recognizing those signals is key though, because if you can catch it at that point, you can redirect and you can hopefully avoid the whole situation. When you see a student walk up and they already have like their hackles raised, they're in a guarding position, or they're walking around in a haze, it might not be the time to break out the hyper mosh pit worship song full of lasers, haze, and a veritable fireworks show. It might be time to take the lower chill, let's do an acoustic set night.
Yeah, try to confuse it before it gets bigger and even more frustrating for everybody involved. Are there other
100%.
resources that we could talk about on that?
Oh, yeah. So there are resources like How to ADHD's YouTube channel mentions spoons or energy buckets. When a person's full of stress and anxiety or sensory overload, even a tiny drop sometimes causes it to overflow and become this huge thing, right? Leading to a meltdown.
So,
So those signs look like fidgeting, stimming, becoming quiet or withdrawn, lashing out at little things, or repetitive questioning or fixating on a topic. I know one of my students who was in 3rd grade at the time had a repetitive line of questions about purple dinosaurs and whether they would take over the world. And believe it or not, when he first saw the Barney show, he was like, I was afraid that was going to happen. And it confirmed all his fears that Barney was going to take over the world. But this is a third grade mind. And that's what happened when he'd get so stressed out and so anxious about everything. Like he'd fixate on one thing. And it didn't make any sense to anybody else but him.
Gotcha. So, as leaders, volunteers, parents, the job in this phase is to observe, offer options. Don't wait for that explosion. You see the signs and act. How do we act on them signs, Daniel?
Instead of saying, hey, what's wrong, which is just more stress, maybe start out by saying, hey, I noticed you are a little quiet, you're a little distracted, you're like kind of like tense. Would you like to go sit in a quiet corner for a bit? Or would you like a fidget toy? Or maybe even depending on if you're one of their trusted adults, putting a hand on their shoulder and saying, it's okay. This simple gesture shows that you're paying attention and provides them a way out. They don't feel special. They don't feel like they're causing a problem if they take an option for an out that might be easier. Some other ways you can learn to help them. We'll go over those later on in this, but trusted adults who are well trained have ways of helping students to not only just avoid the meltdown, but to also process and work through the meltdown. And some of those ways are really simple. It might even just involve using a free app off your app store.
Okay, so let's say they came in and I missed all the immediate signs. For whatever reason, I missed them, but we're not quite full blown meltdown, but definitely noticing something is off. What do I do?
Okay, so pre-meltdown, which is what you're describing, right, is a fairly quick phase in most neurodivergent students. Is basically their body's preparing fight, flight, or freeze, which is this standard trauma responses that we know from like psychology and stuff like that. You'll notice them either begin to like bow up or get combative, or they'll try to flee the situation. If I had a nickel for every bathroom trip that was just an excuse to go STEM somewhere, I'd be a billionaire right now. Um, but the last and probably hardest one to recognize is the freeze, because sometimes freeze can look a lot like compliance when they just are completely zoned out. They're checked out, they're not engaged. So we've got to work on recognizing freeze, fight, or flight. And when it gets to that point, it's key that you start diffusing things.
Okay, so leader, volunteer, parent, if you see this and you see it's already past the point of warning, meltdown is imminent, the red flags, the red flashing, how do we help? How do we help?
That's time to act quickly and find a way to diffuse, redirect, and reorient. So diffuse would be, hey, we're going to take you and we're going to put you in a better situation where you're not as overwhelmed. A redirect would be like, hey, you're feeling all this. Let's go do this. Let's orient all that energy towards something else. And then reorient is, okay, this might be causing you problems, but maybe you can focus on this over here. So a redirect might be an activity. A reorient is to think about something else. This might mean a time to go sit in a quiet space, a chance to have an extra buddy they trust sit next to them, or sit next to a trusted adult, or even to diffuse with something that activates a different unused sensory experience. Like, so example, diffusing would be, hey, if I have this overwhelming sound coming in, maybe I need to use my sense of smell. Maybe need to use my sense of touch. Maybe I need to use my sense of taste. Those are often the most easily accessible and greater sensory inputs that help to short circuit a meltdown in its tracks.
Okay, so let's say I've missed it. What do you even missed? All the warning signs, all the stuff you can full stop. Meltdown is in full swing.
All right. So this is the most important thing to respond, is to respond calmly and caringly, not with anger or punishment. You can't out punish someone who is already in panic mode. This is where the wisdom from like ADHD 2.0, Dr. Ed Hallowell says is so crucial. They explain that during a meltdown, the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex at the front of your brain, is essentially gone. It's offline. You are now a 2-year-old. By the way, that area is the most underdeveloped area of the brain in most neurodivergent individuals. If you aren't aware, neurodivergence is when one part of the brain overdevelops and one part underdevelops in the womb. And so what happens is that those stay in those ratios. So your prefrontal cortex ends up developing slower because other parts of the brain are more developed. That means that like your ADHD kids tend to be more emotionally wired. Autistic kids are more sensory wired. And each one of these things causes a different set of circumstances. So the very area that is responsible for what we consider maturity and good judgment making is the portion of the brain that is not working during a meltdown. That person is operating from their emotional center, from their fight or flight brain, or their sensory system. Trying to reason to them is like trying to convince a tsunami to go backward, or water to go back into a spaghetti strainer. It's not going to work.
So what do we do?
So middle of that, we create a safe space. You need to find a place to physically remove that person from the overwhelming environment. Take them to a quiet corner, like we talked about last episode. Take them to a sensory place. Give them room. And instead of focusing on using words, focusing on presence. So keep your words simple and direct and saying things like, I'm here, you're safe. Don't ask questions because they're already at overwhelm. You need to let them know it's okay. I'm here. Nothing's going to happen because they don't need any more things stacked on top of them. They can't handle that and they can't answer that right now. The part of their brain that would be able to answer that is offline. It's completely panicking right now.
Mm-hmm.
Another way is to provide a physical anchor. We talked about diffusing a few minutes ago. Diffusing is just simply using multiple senses to help their brains reset.
How do we do that? Help them with restarting that cortex.
Creating a safe space, right? Physically removing them from the overwhelming environment, taking them to a quiet corner, like we talked about last episode, stimming, all those things. Staying silent or using minimal language, but practicing presence, being there with them, but not asking them questions and asking them to give more. Instead saying you're safe, reassuring them, being physically present with them, but not in an overwhelming way. Providing a physical anchor like a weighted blanket or a stress ball. The pressure from these can calm the nervous system. It's akin to having a good hug or something like that for them. It helps their nervous system to reset. Sometimes when it's too much, they feel like there's too much on them. A beanbag chair or something light might be a better thing. It helps them to reset their system as long as the overstimulation isn't something caused by a sensation they have on, like clothing. More on this later in the season. We'll talk about autism later this season, and a lot of that is overstimulation of things.
Gotcha. And I know this is a hard one for us parents, and definitely leaders, because we want to do best for the kids, that are in our daily care like a parent, but don't take it personally. The person isn't lashing out at you, whether it's an adult or a child. They're lashing out at the world, basically, because they pretty much lost control of their brain. Their cortex shut down. It sounds like they've just lost control of everything they've known. So our job as leaders, parents, whatever our role is in their lives, an anchor, non-judgmental presence, help their brain get back online. Is this the lesson that you're conveying to us?
Yeah. Really, they get through the storm, if you will, of whatever that feeling is, whatever that overwhelm is, then they'll start to re-engage and reconnect.
So basically, once the storm is over, the meltdown's over. So this is like the last phase of the meltdown. Like it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
what's going to be going on with them as it passes.
So post meltdown, the person is going to feel exhausted and embarrassed. This is a time to re-engage and reassure and reconnect. It's not a time to jump immediately into discussion about what happened. Give them space. When they're ready, have a simple conversation. The role that you play in this student's life is to be a scaffold. ADHD 2.0 says build a learning way that we can learn, okay, what went wrong and how do we not do that? Not scold. I can't punish and say, oh, you're the worst person in the world. Instead, helping them to understand it and to make sure that they can learn and grow from it. Asking questions to help them process, but without judgment. Like, are you feeling okay now? Do you need some water? Like, those are good questions. At a later time down the road, you can talk about what led up to the meltdown, but the focus is on building a strategy for the next time, not assigning blame. When we build this, we build trust. And so much of discipleship for neurodivergence is about trust. It's about having a safe person in their life. Hopefully that's you as parents or pastors, but it's about having that person. Some people at this point will need reassurance and will often question loop about their status with you. One of my students, when this happens, they will come to me and they'll say, oh, but do you still like me? Are we okay? Am I going to be okay? Am I still welcome? Right? Because they realize, oh, I did something wrong and there might be a punishment coming, but they don't realize that it's okay. They had to deal with what they had to deal with and move on.
So while they're coming out of this phase, keep the questions short, sweet, simple answers. Don't expect anything elaborate. Just go for yes or no's.
Yeah, and I mean rebuild the fact that they're safe and they're trusting so they don't go back into another cycle, right? There's really a 3-step phase, if you will, to help individuals like this, right? And I would say it's prevent, respond, and reconnect. So, like, if we can prevent this from happening, it's better. But when we see it happening, we respond. And then if it actually goes through to reconnect, it moves us away from punishing things. Like a lot of leaders might want to punish a student for acting out, but we don't understand that supporting people with compassion is a strategy that helps them. It's not about fixing somebody. It's about walking alongside them. That's the whole point of presence. That's exactly what Jesus did so many times as he walked alongside them saying, that's not who you are anymore. Come follow me. And then I'll reconnect you to purpose, identity, and the ever after.
Wow. So this week we've started laying the groundwork. We've talked about the why and the higher level framework of navigating the meltdown. And if this is interesting, come join us on the other side of the wall where we'll get into the nitty gritty of practical on the spot tools that you can use in your ministry applications.
Because truly discipling every kind of mind isn't just about welcoming everyone to church on Sunday. It's about being prepared to walk with them through their hardest moments. It's about being a reflection of God's love and grace, even when it's messy.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Go out there and make a difference. Remember, everyone has a seat at God's table, and there is a space in heaven for every kind of mind.
And if you want to learn more and join us on the more practical side, hit the like and subscribe button down there and join us on the other side of the wall for the deep dive. Welcome back to the other side of the wall. If you're here, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for being the best of the best for your students and wanting to learn and grow at the ability to help them. You truly are hero level youth workers. if you're on this side of the wall.
Definitely.
So thank you for supporting us. Thank you for helping us. And thank you for supporting your students.
Yes. And so we're diving deeper into practical application of that framework. We're getting into the tangible, on the spot tools that you can use as a leader or a volunteer. I know I can use a few of these as a parent of neurodivergent children, but I am excited to learn more because I'm seeing some things as we've been discussing, the signs, and I've missed some. So let's talk some more about that.
Oh, these strategies are all about a single goal, and that's co-regulation. It's a process where, as the adult, you enter in a calm way and you're helping bring calm to the middle of a storm, right? A dysregulated person will find their way back to regular state because they feel your presence and you're calm. You're not overextended. You're not overwhelmed like they are. If you've ever been in a crowd where someone said, "Oh, there's something wrong," and then everybody just starts panicking, right? We feed off of each other. Well, the same can happen for calm. And so being that calm person, your job isn't to fix them. Your job is to be the person who holds the rope so that they can find their way back.
Wonderful. So let's jump in with some actionable steps that we can take to help that.
Okay. So we talked about the pre-meltdown phase, right? Like practical prevention stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
We talked about observing for warning signs in part one. Now let's look at this and see what you do once you see them, right? The key is to offer choices with purpose, right? This gives the person a sense of control when they're feeling like they have none. Meltdowns are often the body's way of making a way when it feels like there are no other options. The body feels like everything's out of control, and so it just melts down. And so when we give them control options, it helps them to feel, oh, I'm safe and secure, right?
So basically, you're saying when we're dealing with this, it's just like you just need to calm down. We all know that doesn't work. It just makes it worse. Give a different choice of, would you like a drink? Would you want to go sit in a quiet corner? And those options lead to a de-escalation, but then the person gets to choose, which can be empowering. And I think in a way helps take the focus off of in their brain of what's going on. It kind of gets
Exactly.
focused on.
Like the laser light show that's going on stage, instead going and getting a drink helps them, right? Uh, some communities talk about at this phase, maybe having a conversation about why, instead of saying you're getting upset, which can sound like an accusation. Try to help them to understand why. Like, is the music too loud? Let's go find a quieter spot. You're not calling out behavior, you're calling out the external thing that's causing the behavior, right? So there's a subtle shift here that in language, but it's huge, because what you're doing as the adult leader in this situation is you're building trust. You're saying, hey, I see you, I know you, and I can be the person who helps you build this bridge, right? And I want to be your partner in this. I want to see you through this. And instead of making them feel like they're being managed, it makes them feel like they're a part of their own situation.
Yeah. A case in point, when my son was toddler in Sunday school, they told me later that he was getting really upset, which now I recognize due to our discussion here on this podcast. He was probably getting overwhelmed, overstimulated, and he started to act out. And his teacher didn't say why. She just said, let's go in the hallway and go for a walk. And he went for a walk and he calmed down and was able to join his classroom again and focus on the lesson and the fun that they were having in there. And that really worked. And oddly enough, that was the only incident he had thinking about it. And the whole time he's been in that kids' Sunday school from the time he was like 3 or 4-ish. And now he's in youth as a nearly 13-year-old, and he's never had an incident. They took the time to take him out of that situation. They de-escalated it,
Mhm.
and he's never had a reaction like that since. So that's catching that early on helped him future management. He learned to self-manage after that. I'm not saying
Yep.
everyone will do that, but does that help kids learn to manage it in the future?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's really cool. That sounds like you had a really great pre-K teacher there who knew how to recognize things and knew how to help them. Another option, right, that can help short circuit an oncoming storm is a grounding exercise. This is pulled from counseling, right? Counselors use these all the time, and they're very simple things. Like the 5 4 3 2 1 method is pretty standard where you teach in elementary school. So you have them take a deep breath once or twice. You have them identify 5 things they can see, right? 5 distinct objects in your environment. Like, tell me everything about them. 4 things that they can feel, like shift your focus to a different sensation and identify 4 things you can feel or touch: the fabric on your clothes, the feel of gravity, the texture of a chair. 3 things that you can hear. And they need to be little things where you actually have to listen. So stuff like the hum of an appliance, a voice that's in a different room, distant traffic, right? 2 things you can smell. And in our youth group, that's probably going to be an interesting experience. And then if you're a middle school teacher, I know, and bless your heart. More blessed. Uh, the last thing you can focus on is one thing they can taste. Taste buds are one of the strongest things. So even water, gum, things like that. A study I saw once said, one of the easiest ways to short circuit an oncoming storm is Sour Patch Kids,
Really?
because so sour that it shuts off all the other circuits. That's why a lot of anxious kids, and I suspect that's why this generation likes so much sour and spicy things, because it helps them deal with their anxiety because it shuts it down.
That's interesting to know because my son loves spicy foods. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that. That would make sense because my daughter also loves sour stuffs, the Sour Patches and stuff. So
Yeah.
interesting. So
Well, it's not just that, but that is definitely an element that can be helpful. When you do these methods, you'll find suddenly your students able to communicate more clearly and usually make better choices outside of the extra stimulus. And then you, as a youth worker, you deserve a Starbucks.
right. So as we were discussing earlier, when a meltdown is in full swing, your physical presence and actions are more important than any words we could say. Just being that shoulder for them that steady rock. And we talked about being a calm anchor. What does that actually look like?
It means you use a calm, low voice. You're very slow and deliberate in your movements. Your body language should communicate safety, not fear or frustration. More open stances, getting down on their level if possible. Avoid touching them unless you know that deep pressure is calming for them. And even then, we're talking deep pressure is usually like a 30-second to a minute long hug. So obviously, in a lot of our ministry environments, that's outside of safety boundaries. So thinking through that, unless you're that person, like you're their parent or you're their grandparent, other things that might be helpful would be a weighted blanket, even just placing your hand on a shoulder for a minute while they're there. You see a kid who's just shaking, placing your hand on their shoulder can help them to regulate, because they feel your pulse on them, and that'll help bring their hypertension down. That'll help bring their pulse down. This is only in cases where you know that that's helpful. For example, a lot of autism spectrum students find light touches to be more like itchy tags at the back of your shirt. So light touches are not welcomed. But if you're if you're with an anxious student that is a thing, it's a really helpful thing, right? By the way, parents, hug your kids, hug them even if they don't want it. It helps to reset their circuits.
Now, I'm going to play
So,
hard. Hugs,
mhm,
discussing. As youth workers, Sunday school ministers, they're awkward. I know I've served several vacation Bible schools. We go through training.
mhm,
Um, and they talk about what happens if a child acts out, if a child is overstimulated, there are
mhm.
things we're allowed to do. And then sometimes, like, I'll see my child and I'll give him a hug. And then you see another kid looking at you like, I wish you were my mom. And we're not allowed to do certain things. Let's talk on what we're, as youth workers, like my church has certain restrictions, what we're allowed to do, what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say. Can we elaborate on that, Daniel?
A little bit. Like, so if you have a meltdown situation and there is someone who's trained to do this, there's someone who is a safe adult who is also trained on this and has sign-offs from parents and from the student themselves. Sometimes a side hug can be helpful. You see these and we make fun of them sometimes, but side hugs can be really, really helpful in this. But it's not even just the hug, it's deep pressure. So something like, can I give you a handshake and give him a firm handshake, or even a pat on the back or something like that. Having things that offer deep pressure, like weighted hoodies or weighted blankets or stress balls, are very helpful. All of those things are very helpful, and they fill that role of tactile touch, which is what is really helpful for them. Those are some methods that we can use instead. Make sure that you're following your clear boundaries. Make sure there's too many things out in this world that have gone haywire. And so methods are important, and how you do this is important. But more so than anything for that child, it's going to be your presence in the room. Even being in close proximity to you will help calm their nerves. As long as you're a trusted person,
Yeah,
right? If you're one of their people, they will calm in your presence. If you're not, then you need to defer to someone who is, and call mom, call dad, call their uncle, call the person who is their trusted person in there.
got
You can also use some visual anchors. These are especially helpful for little kids. If they're fixed on something that's stressful, offer them something else to look at, right? Look at my hand. Can you squeeze the stress ball for me? It redirects their focus and engages a different part of their brain. In extreme cases, things like video games can be used. So I've got one person that I've worked with in the past who they get so wound up that we just have to go play a video game, because nothing helps them relax more than that. Games like, and we're not talking like shoot 'em up games. We're talking like Stardew Valley. We're talking like Crossy Road or something like that. Something very simple, very easy, something very calming, not a battlefield war
yeah.
game or something.
Video
Right.
game? My goodness, I see my kids like lose it on a video game. And it's like, this is almost worse than a meltdown. Why would you recommend video games? But if there's ones out
Okay.
there, are there video games out there that are formulated for a child that's having a meltdown that needs that? Are there video games and apps for video games that help with that function?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's been interesting to see in counseling. Stardew Valley is a game on Switch that is actually being used in counseling centers,
Huh?
because it's very helpful and it's very predictable how the day is going to go. You can predict it, you can hear it. The music is very soothing and melodic and helps calm down. Those are great things, but it's a distraction strategy. My goal with the video game is not to say, hey, go play a video game. My goal is to help you in that moment to redirect long enough to get control, right? and then we can deal with it, right?
Yep.
So obviously, I want a longer term strategy. I want you to learn how to control yourself more. But at the same time, I want you to learn to be able to distract yourself from the overwhelm long enough to think through it. And this brings us to a very practical tip. One of the easiest things that you can do is breathe. You breathe with them. If you can take slow breaths and even say something like, let's breathe deeply together, this model helps them regulate their heart rate. It helps them bring their heart rate down. There are a million different models that help with this, but generally, inhaling through your nose for a 4 count, holding it for 2 count, and then exhaling for 6 forces your nervous system to calm your pulse. Doing this for about 2 to 5 minutes will help anyone reset and refocus, even if you're not neurodivergent. If it's a full-blown panic attack, sometimes a 4 count through the nose, 4 count out through the mouth, and then hold it for 6 seconds. Like, don't breathe in for another 6 seconds is also helpful because it forces your body to focus on breathing, not on the panic. This is key to model and help them practice for the next time this happens. Because if they can learn to breathe through it, then the next time it happens, it's so much easier because they already have a tool of how to deal with it.
I know a lot of people use like a 10-minute countdown when they're mad and de-escalate anger. So it would make sense that it would help de-escalate whatever's going on.
I'm not sponsored by them, but there's a tool on most app stores called Finch. It's a personal thing, but under the first aid tab, they have different kinds of breathing and grounding exercises that are very helpful.
Okay. Well, let's say we've got them through. We're now in what you referred to as the post-meltdown phase earlier in our show. And in our last episode, we had talked about the fact that our goal is to make it a debrief, not a debriefing. So how do we do that?
Okay, so we have a gentle conversation. This is not this is not a you did this, you're the whatever. So how do we do that? We use I statements and we focus on observation, not blame. Instead of saying you were really loud and disruptive, you tore Tommy's little craft project into pieces. Try, I noticed that when the music was playing and you started getting upset, what was that like for you? The goal is not to blame them for their actions. The goal is for them to recognize what caused those actions, right? This moves the conversation from being accusation to curiosity, right? And the final critical step is to help them build a meltdown toolbox, if you will. And if you're the trusted youth worker for them, you can help them build this over time. It takes sometimes 4, 6, or 8 different sessions for this to happen, right? This is collaboration. So you ask them, what are 3 things we can do the next time you start to feel like this? Or maybe go to the quiet corner and say, hey, can you go ask for a fidget toy or ask to take a walk or something like that? Those are all tools that you can put in their tool belt along with breathing that will help them to manage and control and live a better life anyway.
So basically you're working with them and you're helping them create a tangible plan. And you're not just solving this meltdown they got going right now. You're empowering them, which is very important, with skills for better self-regulation in future meltdowns or before even they hit the meltdown. You're giving those tools for their own toolbox they could pull on when they start recognizing their own symptoms.
100%. And what we want to do with students is we always want to help them build their toolbox, to build up their own abilities. We do this with Bible study. Like, I love preaching the Bible, but if I don't help my student to read the Bible on their own, they're not going to be a very good Christian for very long, right? They've got to learn to do the Bible study themselves. They got to learn to pray for themselves because regardless, mom and dad, although they pray for you and they pray with you, they're not going to always be around. You're going to actually have to pray at some point. And so what we're doing is we're just helping them in a holistic way build up their faith so that they understand that even in these moments of chaos and panic and overwhelm, there's still a God who loves them and cares for them, right?
Yep.
I it can be some of the most challenging parts of youth ministry and student ministry and children's ministry, but with the right mindset, with looking for tools, you can transform chaotic moments into powerful moments for growth, trust, and connection. And they will help those students grow long after they have left your church or my church or anybody's church and moved on into adulthood. And maybe by doing this, we not only release that student, but we release that student's students.
Yeah, it's all about embodying God's patience, his unwavering love. And it's about being a source, really, in the calm of their storm, giving them that anchor that you discussed earlier.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you see it all the time as a mother, right? Like, this is what happens when your kid wants mom. They're in the middle of a storm. They come up and they give you a hug and they're like, I want mom.
Yep.
Why? Because that lets them co-regulate. What we're doing is teaching them that they can co-regulate for themselves and they can do that. It's a great thing. We're acting and we're entrusted with the ability to help them grow and grow their own tool set. So thanks for joining us for this episode and everything else. We hope these strategies empower you to love and serve your community better and with greater confidence and grace. Just remember, there's room at the table for every kind of mind. Jesus wants everyone to follow him. Bye.